Rāja-vidyā, rāja-guhyaṁ, pavitram idam uttamam, pratyakṣāvagamaṁ dharmyam, susukham kartum avyayam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So I will just bring your attention to some of the words used here in the Sanskrit. This first one, rāja-vidyā. Raja generally refers to a king, and vidya refers to knowledge. Knowledge is opposed to ignorance. But here it is referencing the supreme form of education. Then you have the second term, rāja-guhyam. This word guhyam means something that is a great secret, but it should be understood as being most confidential knowledge. So here, this knowledge is spoken of as being both rāja-vidyā and rāja-guhyam. Then we have the term pavitram. This knowledge is the purest. And then uttamam, that this knowledge is utterly transcendental. It is not tinged in any way by material inebriety. It is fully transcendental. And then finally, the word I will just bring your attention to is a pratyakṣa, which means it is directly experienced, which is the meaning of realization. I mean, sometimes people use this word without thinking much about it. Realization in a practical sense means when something becomes an actual reality to you. It was the realization of something. It practically became a reality. So this is, one may ask, okay, well, what is this knowledge that is being spoken of here? And it is fundamentally the knowledge of the soul. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in his commentary, he has stated the following. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved in so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities, but there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. It's like, wow, this is an extraordinary observation. You know, we become very accustomed to the world that we are born into and the life that we are born into and the norms that have been established by others going back sometimes for many generations. And this point has been made that amongst all the knowledge that one can seek to acquire, it is really only the knowledge to understand that which is spirit is the supreme knowledge. It is only this knowledge that is vitally important, because everything else is associated with that which is both temporary and changing. From the Vedic perspective or the yogic perspective, it's quite extraordinary, where you can see someone dedicate their life to studying a certain species of moth, for instance, or a particular species of grass, and they will look at all the genetics associated with it and the different places and the different variations of it that appear in different parts of the planet, and they will fill up their lab with specimens, and they will have everything cataloged and categorized, and they will utterly dedicate their entire life to studying something that actually provides no ultimate benefit for them. This is knowledge of that which is temporary and changing. It has nothing to do with me, the eternal spiritual being. And when I leave this material body, all of that effort and endeavor and all of that so-called education will simply be gone. And I will move on to another body, and I will assume another bodily identity in another family and another society. And I may become interested in something entirely different. And all that which I dedicated my life to is just gone. It's not even on the horizon. There's no recollection of it whatsoever. So the point is not that a person should not have any interest in this world. No, that's not what's been stated at all. But when one does this to the exclusion of any spiritual cultivation or the undertaking of acquiring actual spiritual knowledge, then it's like, well, what purpose does that serve? As was stated in the previous verse that we studied, the need to engage in one's duties and responsibilities in life, that is accepted. But it must be done with a spiritual foundation, a spiritual awareness, a remembrance of that which is spiritual. In the last part of the commentary of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, I'll just read again. Yet the soul is the most important part of this body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. So we understand from the first part of the Bhagavad-gita, where Krishna describes in so many different ways the distinction between the body and the spirit soul, the atma, the actual self, the spiritual self. But in doing that, there is no actual positive information about the soul itself, just the fact that it is distinct and opposite from that which is matter. Where things are going in the Bhagavad-gita at this point is to understand that the highest and most perfect happiness that is experienced by the soul is when the spirit soul is engaged in the loving service of the Lord. Now we have a complete picture. We don't just understand the essence of the self or the soul, but we understand where it fits in relation to everything else, its position and its natural function in this relationship. And this second part of the puzzle, as it were, understanding my eternal and natural function, is the most important part of this confidential knowledge, which is being revealed here by Krishna. So, reading again from the commentary of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as it will be seen, actual devotional service, or bhakti, begins after liberation. So we'll pause there for a moment. The initial practices of all spiritual paths are to bring one to this appreciation of the fact that I am an eternal spiritual being. Real and factual, actual bhakti, or termed here as devotional service, only really begins after the stage of liberation. So continuing. So in the Bhagavad-gita, it is said, Brahma Bhuta, or after being liberated, or being situated in the Brahman position, one's devotional service begins. By executing devotional service, one can understand the Supreme Lord. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana, or Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. So this is a very important point, that these other practices, yoga practices, when they are practiced independent of cultivating bhakti, they will not bring one to an actual realization of the personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord. That bhakti must become part of what one is practicing or engaged in in order to have that realization. So continuing. Without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prashana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. This is a statement from the Bhagavad Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, second chapter, the 20th verse or shloka. When one's heart is cleansed of all material desire, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of spiritual activity, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should accept it. So that's very wonderfully and concisely laid out. This particular verse that we're reading, it might be an idea if we read the verse preceding this and the one that follows it, so that you understand it within the broader context of Krishna's instruction to Arjuna. So we begin with the first shloka in the 9th chapter. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you the most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." So we had read this previously in the introduction, and just bringing your focus to the point that because Arjuna was described as never being envious of Krishna, and we had spoken about the importance of that. Then continuing, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. I'll just make the point that the word religion here is translated from dharma. Dharma is a much broader appreciation of spiritual practice. Many people today have a very somewhat limited, and there is a negative connotation a lot of people put on the term religion, like it's inherently flawed, it's based on ignorance, it's for people that are not very intelligent. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And these attempts to demean that which is truly spiritual are attempts by those that are envious of the personality of Godhead. I'll just read that verse what we're reading again. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self, by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So it is the perfection of all spiritual undertaking to come to the platform of self-realization. And then the next verse, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So in this regard, I would like to read a commentary of Srila Sridhar Swami, which I have mentioned before, the extraordinarily famous and ancient commentator on both the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-gita, and many of the ancient Vedic texts. He is considered one of the very great spiritual authorities from a different lineage than the one to which I belong. Yet all of the great spiritual teachers within our lineage offer their deepest and most reverential respects to Sridhar Swami. Lord Krishna emphasizes the paramount position of this knowledge by a metaphor using the word raja, meaning king. The king is the highest authority in the kingdom, and this spiritual vidya, or wisdom, is the highest authority of all knowledge. The word guhyam means confidential, and among all confidential knowledge, this wisdom is the highest. The word raja is placed before the secondary words vidya and guhyam to place emphasis of this fact on each. This wisdom is supremely holy, completely sanctifying, and directly experienced by those whose senses are directed to the Supreme Lord in bhakti, or pure loving devotion. The results of this wisdom is incomparable, as one will never deviate from righteousness, and it includes the merits of all virtuous acts prescribed in the Vedic scriptures. It is easy to practice, being simple to perform, and it is imperishable because it results, or its result, is everlasting. So that is an extraordinarily wonderful declaration made, or observation made by Sridhar Swami about the importance of this essential message that is being offered by the Bhagavad-gita. If one is to attain the highest spiritual realization of the self and of God, one has to engage in this process. And that engagement has to be voluntary, and it must be performed in a mood of great affection or love for the Supreme Person. The important principle that governs self-realization and God-realization is the principle of free will. The nature of the soul itself, the Atma, is that we all have free will. We are free to choose, which means that we can choose a wrong direction or we can choose a right direction. But that freedom remains. That freedom is the most fundamental requirement for love. For one to experience and manifest actual spiritual love, it must be something that is done freely. When a person manifests some level of enviousness towards God, wanting themselves to be the central enjoying agent in this world, to be the center of everything, where I see this world and everyone and everything, in relation to me, this is considered a manifestation of this envy. My wanting to occupy a position that is not aligned with my eternal spiritual nature. My eternal spiritual nature is that I am an eternal loving servant of the supremely lovable personality of Godhead. If I want anything other than that, then I have the freedom to pursue that. But while I am clinging on to any form of enviousness or any desire for self-importance, this will make it so that I can not realize this highest truth. And this is why it is called it is the king of all confidential knowledge. In order to gain entry, one cannot do it by trickery. Oh, I'll pretend to be a bhakti yogi. I'll pretend to go through the externals in order that I can gain the experience. No, it doesn't work like that. It must be done voluntarily. There must be a complete surrender of one's heart. And this is a very, very important spiritual principle. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Bol. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.